Hi, I'm Gina Holiday, and I am an artist, illustrator, a mother of two. I run a blog, Spoonful of Faith, and I just want to share a little bit of my heart with you all today. Today we're talking about joy in times of despair. So a little bit about me is in 2006, I was diagnosed with lupus, and at that point in time, I was like 19 and just straight out of high school and college, kind of always very athletic and just in sports. And I remember getting that diagnosis and being told that it was an autoimmune disease and that I would live with it for the rest of my life. And it was just hard to swallow. I didn't really take it seriously at first. But I started to see in my health, I was having different issues with things, and I was really upset with God for many years. And at that point in time, I actually grew up in a Christian home, but I ended up at like 18 deciding that I wasn't going to go to church anymore. And that was mostly due to being raised in a very like legalistic type of church and like setting. So I always thought that God thought just not good thoughts about me, or that I was going to go to hell for everything that I did. And I didn't understand the message of the cross. I didn't understand just all that Jesus stands for. But at 18 and 19, I kind of just like let it go. And that was probably one of the hardest times in my life. I rededicated my life back to Christ when I was 25. But, that's 6-7 years of doing adulthood, without that constant comfort, just knowledge that God is for me. And I don't know, just all of those things I did alone. And so I definitely walked through seasons of despair where I felt like there was no reason to hope for things. And then I came to a point when I was about 25. I actually had graduated college. I had a pretty good job. I had everything that I would want worldly wise. And what I mean by that is I had the nice job, the nice car, the nice house. I had all of these things, but I wasn't happy. And I found myself in this place of depression and just like a cloud over me. And I didn't realize I was asking all these internal questions to myself, but I felt like, well, what's the point of life? If the most fun and enjoyable thing of our life is going to be going on a vacation or the weekend, like living for the weekend, I was like, what is the point? And I definitely thought like, why are we doing this? What's like just to be part of the rat race? And God answered me one night. It's really funny to think about because I didn't realize I was at that point and I was calling out to him. But in the middle of the night that I woke up and I heard him say, like I heard the Spirit speaking to me, and it was the first time I've ever experienced that in my entire life. And he said, why are you asking everyone else where to go when I am the one that created you? And ever since that day, like the next day I called my dad. My dad's an assistant pastor, and I called my dad and I'm like, I'm coming to church. And it was just like this awakening of my spirit. And I will never forget, right after that, I came to God with all those hard questions of like, okay, like I'm living for you now. So all of these things that I'm going through or all these issues that I might be having, like they're going to be cured, right? I remember being like, okay, like you're gonna heal me tomorrow from lupus. Like that's gonna happen. And it didn't happen overnight. It didn't. And I remember feeling very confused because I grew up just in the knowledge of thinking that maybe my faith was tied to my healing and all these different things that I don't believe in and I have walked through and know not to be true anymore. But I definitely misunderstood and thought, what is going on, Lord? Like you are a healer, so that means you're going to heal me. And I remember right away in those first few years, the Lord just spoke to me within every walk, every day of my life. I just felt and heard him in his direction in every way. And I remember just knowing like, we're going to walk through this together. Okay. And you're going to see your healing, but it's not going to be until you give it up. Like, cast your cares, right? Don't sit and think and dwell and believe the lies that I don't care about you because it's not happening in your timing. Just believe that I know what I'm doing and I have you in my best interest and in my hand. And I think at first it was really hard for me to think and to just stop thinking about lupus and living with it. And I was dealing with all these things and these issues every single day. And I remember at one point I was taking like 7-8 pills a day. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, you need to heal me from this. I don't want to do this anymore. And I felt very hopeless, but it was nothing like when I didn't have Christ. There was always this bead of hope, of just knowing that God is gonna do something. But I think for me, I had to realize that hope, I came to a point kind of where I started to say, well, Abraham had to hope against all hope. Like, he believed for something that he could not see, that it was actually not going to come to pass in his lifetime. And he still believed that God was true and God was the word was true. And so I started to try to have faith in that respect of believing, like, regardless of what happens, I'm going to take God's word as truth. Regardless of what my situation looks like, regardless of, every day where I'm dealing with these things, I'm going to pull down my thoughts, pull down the strongholds, and I'm going to believe that he is telling me the truth. And it was really hard for a really long time. In choosing joy in that, it's just like, I don't know. Sometimes you get to a point where you're just like, how can I be happy? How can I be happy when I'm going through a hard thing? And there's other hard things that I've gone through in my life. And I guess I won't say that joy is happiness, because you can still have joy and not, have this huge glow and smile all over you, but you can still be like, have this satisfaction and comfort in knowing that, like, things are good and they will be good because you're in the Lord's hands. So there's other hard things that I've gone through. And with lupus, just personally, I went through a lot of seasons of depression and just hopelessness. But also when I started my business, I left a very good job, a good paying job, to do what God told me to do. And that was to start Spoonful of Faith and to run my blog and my freelance illustration business full time. And I was fueled with faith. Like, I was fueled with faith before I made that decision and before I did it. And when I did it, everything was great until it wasn't, right? The first year and a half of my business, it was really hard. And last year was the point where I pulled myself kind of like out of the trenches of hopelessness. And I will say that what I learned in being in a really hard, dark place and feeling like, where are you, God? Like, what if we don't have things so we can take care of things, if things aren't going the way that I thought that you said that they were going to go, like you told me to go this way, and it's not turning out the way I thought. What I started to realize is that I had to take my expectations off of everything, and I had to take the word for truth. And once I started to take the word for truth and really soak in that, I began to experience joy. So for me, I had to remember that God told me that he would never leave me nor forsake me. And so that has been one of the biggest drivers of hope and joy, and just realizing that, like, in those really hard and like miserable places, those dark places where you're like, I don't know where the light is and I don't know when I will see it again. Just remember that God hasn't left you. That was so eye-opening, and just such a truth that I had to hold on in that time, was like, God hasn't left you. Like, I know that you think that maybe you're not hearing from him as much, or maybe you just don't feel close, or you're mad. Maybe you're mad at him. I had many seasons where I was like mad. In this past year, I was mad. Like, I was so mad at him, just because the way that he took me was not where I wanted to go. And I was mad that he was taking me that way. And I knew I had to keep going. That was like the hardest part of it all, was like, I had to keep going. But I remember listening to a sermon that was just explaining that, like, he took the Israelites through the wilderness, and it was not the way they wanted to go, but they had to do it in order to get to the promised land. And so I started to believe that he loves me. I'm a child of God. He is well pleased with me. He was pleased with me before I did anything. He died for me before I did anything, before I could prove my worth or any of these things. And that, I'm not saying that I want to do these things or that I do these things, but sometimes we can get caught in that, saying like, well, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve him to be good to me. But the thing is, he is pleased with you before any of it. So if you live for him, and if you trust him and you're walking with him, know that if you're in a hard place, he has not left you. He doesn't think that you're gonna, he's not leaving you in that place and thinking, oh, you're gonna stay there, or I'm gonna put you here. He is a merciful God. And once I started to realize that and believe those things, I really was able to grasp joy. Now, the scripture that I love that really helped me is James 1:2-4. And it's about considering it all joy, the trials and the circumstances that you go through, knowing that it's going to give us patience and our perseverance, and will be basically come out as pure gold, right? And there was a study that I did that I really opened my eyes to that verse, and saying that when you make a precious metal, it has to go through pressure to become what it needs to be. And so those times, those hard walks and dark runs that you feel like you might be doing, the Lord is with you. And through it, if you can continue to hold on to him through it, he's going to bring you out more pure than you went when you went through it. And an example of that for me is, my son is 2 years old, and when he was 4 months old, he almost needed a blood transfusion because he had low blood cell counts, and there was this blood disease that was happening from his body, from me, that came from my placenta, because of the lupus that was in my body. And so I had a lot of guilt and like, just, I just felt really bad. Like, I did this to him, and like, why did I, there was a lot that we kind of went through with that. And then my son also had issues has had issues in his bones, just not growing. And this last thing that hit us was that he has scoliosis in his back, and a severe infantile scoliosis at a 70 degree for a 2-year-old. All the things that I went through with lupus and my own health journey prepared me for what I am going through for my son, with my son. And it's like, God doesn't he doesn't want to like hurt us and harm us. He has good thoughts towards us, right? But these situations that come on our lives, he can use them to give us new life, to redeem us, to resurrect what's the dead things that are in us, and he will do it. He will do it. And so the things that I went through in my own health journey were the fire for my joy when I was dealing with the things with my son. Because I could seriously sit there and say, Lord, you have to take care of this. Like, I cannot stress, worry. I can't do that. I can't. I don't have the capacity to take this on. I can't fix a back. I don't know how to straighten up scoliosis, And so, and I could also say, you can do it. You've done it. You've done it. My health for lupus is in the best conditions it's ever been in my entire life. And I owe it all to Jesus. Because he healed me over time through walking through hard seasons and still deciding that I was going to choose to live for him and to run for him and to continue to do everything that he had given me to do, despite the diagnosis, despite the situation. And once I grasped hold of that, joy came. It came. The night was dark, but joy came in the morning. Like, it came. And that joy has continued to keep me through other hard issues. And when we went to, my son has had like 2 miracles that have happened in his life. And when we went to his first, he has to wear a cast around his abdomen to straighten his back. And it's a 24/7 cast. He cannot take it off. And when we went to get the first one on, the doctor was very pessimistic about it because the degree of his back was so bad that they're like, well, he probably still gonna need surgery later on in life, or multiple surgeries on his spine. And that first cast that they put on, they said it'll probably improve about 20%. And it was a miraculous improvement. The doctor said he couldn't even believe that it looked like it did. And it straightened up so much in just one time. And I was very just amazed at God's goodness and faithfulness to us. His faithfulness is not dependent on our faithfulness. He's faithful because that is his characteristic. He will do what he says he will do. He will walk with you through those times. He will never leave you nor forsake you, because he is faithful. Not because we are faithful, because he is faithful. And when I really understood that and started to grasp hold of that, joy was there. Joy. Just to be able to say, I'm gonna live and I'm gonna keep going and I'm gonna keep fighting despite all the things that are thrown at me, all the bricks that are being thrown at me. I'm gonna build something with them instead of giving up, instead of losing hope. And I know that God is faithful. I know that I can look back on his resume and see that he has done this before and he will do it again in whatever way he's got to do it. And just keeping a journal of the things that he has done for me in my life. And I call it my gratitude journal. Anytime that like I just think about it, I'm like, let me write down things that I'm thankful for right now. And it's kind of like, you know, if you have a prayer journal, it works in that same kind of way where you can look back on it and see, wow, like in that moment I didn't understand, but now I understand, right? Like he's told us that in his word, like you don't know, that he told the disciples, you don't know what I'm doing today, but you will, like you will. And I think we have to hold on to that in those hard times of despair, in the state of our nation and our world and just everything right now. It can be easy to lose hope. It's easy to lose hope. It's easy to that's the easier route. I don't mean that in like I don't mean that by saying like, oh, you just easy, whatever. It's just easy. It's not. It's a choice. It's an active choice, but it's an easier route to just give up. And God is a victorious God, and he wants us to hold on and to know that joy will come. It will come. You don't have to do all of these things to get it. It will come in the morning if you can keep holding on to the truth of who he is and his word in the night. And remember that he is with you. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. He will never leave you. And that's really like, he will never leave you physically, and he will never leave you mentally. He will be there with you. And you have to just believe that even when you can't hear, even when you don't know what he's saying, I usually try to go back to what the last thing that he said, because I probably didn't do it. But if I did, even if I can't hear him, I still have to know that he's with me. He's with me. I tell myself, I wake myself, put myself in the mirror. He is with me. Lord, you are with me. Because you said you are. You're faithful. This is your word. And I will not allow the enemy to lie to me and put a blinder in front of my eyes and tell me that you've forgotten me and that you're leaving me here in this place. You're not leaving me. This is the way that you're taking me. I may not understand it, but this is the way that you're taking me, and I will hold on to your word because your word is true. So I just hope that encouraged you today. I don't know what you're experiencing in your life, whatever. It could not be a time of despair, but I know that he told us that we're going to have trials and tribulations and troubles in this world, but that he's already overcome the world. So if we can just hold on to his truth and the fact that he's with us in those times, joy will come. So thank you for listening. I hope you got something out of it.